All right. Welcome to Guarantee News. Of course, I'm your host, Garrett. And for today's episode, we are going to be giving a quick update on everything that's happened so far with this weekend on the Russia, Ukraine, America meeting, ceasefire talks that have been going on Friday. We talked about this on this channel. Trump met with Putin in Alaska to talk about a ceasefire. And now because of that meeting on Monday, today, August 18th, Trump also met with President Volodymyr Zelensky. I know I'm saying his name wrong. I'm sorry. I know I keep saying his name wrong. But the president of Ukraine and multiple other European leaders about the meeting and just getting some talks about how the ceasefire can end. Now we're going to start with this tweet from Donald Trump last night on Sunday before this meeting that says President Zelensky of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to, or he can continue to fight. Remember how it started. No getting back Obama given Crimea, which is important to know, which is this area that Russia now has control over, as well of all of this area. Let's just go to this map really quickly. This is like all of what Russia currently has of control of Ukraine, and we're going to get to that in a moment with the ceasefire. As Ukraine getting this land back, spoiler alert, no, and no ceasefire do I think they're going to get that land back. We're going to talk about this, but Russia currently has this part of Ukraine and this all controlled. It's Russia's at this point. Pretty much all of this strip, really down here, really all of this strip and here, 20% of Ukraine is now pretty much in control of Russia. Trump said in this tweet, in this Truth Social yesterday, no getting back Obama given Crimea, parentheses, 12 years ago without a shot being fired, and no going into NATO by Ukraine. Some things never change. The no going into NATO by Ukraine is like a big thing that Putin doesn't want. That Putin's not having. Putin's not having Ukraine being able to go into NATO as a part of ending the ceasefire war, right? So the meeting on Friday in Alaska happened with Putin and Trump. A lot of conversation about, you should definitely look into, this isn't for this video, but look into kind of some of the talks or conversation about why the meeting being in Alaska was special, and not just because that was Putin's first time there in years, but just the history between Alaska, Russia, and Trump, right? So that's even interesting that it was there. And then there was a lot of conversations with people seeming like Putin and Trump were very friendly, just with the videos of them being together, with the talks and all of that conversation, right? Let me just start off by saying my take. Trump said he doesn't want a ceasefire anymore. He wants a cease agreement. A ceasefire is a little bit quicker. It's going to be, or not quicker, but it's not long term. It's going to be like getting everybody together saying we're going to stop our war while we try to do a longer term thing. Trump is saying, I don't think I can do a ceasefire. I think I can do a cease agreement, which is more long lasting and putting together specific things of like how we're going to keep this and how we're going to get this going the way that we want it to go, right? Now, if Trump is able to do a cease agreement where the land that Russia already has, which is this land, if he's able to do a cease agreement where he's saying Russia will pull out of continuing to go into Ukraine and Russia's going to keep this land that it already has, because me saying this might sound weird, but everything I've read, all the videos that I've seen, even the people on CNN that are fans of Ukraine that wanted America to give all the money to Ukraine possible and thinks Ukraine should be a part of NATO and all for democracy, even they are saying that this land that Russia has right now, this area that I'm showing, Ukraine's not getting that back in a ceasefire. That's not gonna happen. So if Trump is able to do a cease agreement that includes Russia keeping that land, but Russia agreeing to not go into Ukraine anymore, Trump putting into place some deterrence, which this article that we'll get to in a second, the CBS article gets to, some sort of American deterrence that keep Russia from invading any greater and is able to stop the killing, to stop the bloodshed, I would have to say that is an objective win for Trump. Now, how he does it, how close he gets to Putin, and where he leaves the Ukrainians does matter, but the conversations that he's having over this past 3 days, over this past 72 hours, the meeting on Friday, the meeting that he's having right now with Zelensky and other European leaders, I will say it is an objective win. And I came in here, I said on like Thursday or Friday when I talked about this, and I said, if these meetings went a certain type of way, if Trump is able to do this, it does look like I will have to come in and say Trump won here. And Trump got a win here. Now, let's read a little bit of this article because we want to get into some sourcing. And this is going to just do like a little bit of a update or give you guys like a broad view of what's going on. Trump hosted Ukrainian President Zelensky and European leaders at the White House on Monday to discuss the path forward. The leaders presented a united front. The leaders, because Europe, they care very much about this, which we'll get into in a second, and European allies, stressing the need for security guarantees in an eventual peace deal to deter Russia from invading in the future. That's what I was talking about, those American things, those American security guarantees that, from Trump, according to Trump, won't involve soldiers, but maybe weapons. They talked about that a little bit, but security to deter Russia from invading in the future. That's important. Trump said any guarantees would involve the U.S. in some form. That's important. And the last thing I want to get with this right off the bat is, now, while the public parts of the Zelensky-Trump talks went well, which is important because we all know the last time, or if you don't know, go look into it. In January, the last time these two met in the West Wing, Trump and J.D. Vance basically just berated them and said, you should be happy we're doing anything for you, right? So the fact that this went well is a story in and of itself. But the proof will be in the pudding in the coming days, since Bradley Bowman, senior director of the Center of Military and Political Power. Now, Trump said that after these meetings today with Zelensky and European leaders, he's going to be talking to Putin and maybe hopefully starting a conversation between Putin, Zelensky, and Trump to get this war done. And again, if he is able, this is a big if he's able to get Zelensky, or not Zelensky, Putin to agree to stop invading, it's really to stop invading. And if he's able to get Zelensky to agree to, this land is, you guys aren't getting this land back, but Zelensky's also, and you're not going to NATO. Zelensky has to agree to, you're not going to be able to join NATO. You're not getting that land back, but we will put American security things in place to make sure Russia can no longer invade. That's a win for Trump. But the thing about that is, the other side of that is, what is Trump's relationship with Putin? And is Putin leading Trump along? Is Putin going to stop this war? Because the big thing with Putin is he wants Ukraine to not join NATO, because if he feels like if Ukraine joins NATO, that is a harm to Russia and his empire and everything he has going on over there. So can Trump get Putin to agree to say, this land is enough? Are you going to stop now? That's a big question. If not, then it gets this conversation of, okay, the thing I've been saying all the time on Guaranteed News, Trump said he would end the war in a day and he can't do it. That's another thing he lied about. But if he's able to end the war with Ukraine seceding some land, but with Russia agreeing to go out of the land that they're in now, but don't have full military control over, because that's a whole thing too. Yeah, Russia has control of all of this. Let's go back to the bigger map. Russia has control of all of this and this, but they have military presence in other places in Ukraine. Are they going to stop that military presence and just take the land they have now? That's another thing that Trump has to get Putin to agree to. These are all big things. But again, if you're thinking the ceasefire is going to be Russia completely getting out of all of this land that they have military control over, this eastern region of, I'm not going to say this right, I know they have this, let's see. Let's go back to this map here, right here. Let me go back to what this is. This, you see them. You can type them in. I'm not going to say I'm wrong because I'm going to say I'm wrong and then people are going to roast me. But if you think the ceasefire is going to happen with Putin agreeing to give this in, well, that's not going to happen. And you're going to have a reason to talk shit about Trump, specifically with the Ukrainian-Russian ceasefire, for a very long time, because I just don't see how that happens, how you get Putin to agree with that. But I can see how Trump can get Zelensky to agree to, hey, we're going to get them the places where they're not in military control, they will leave, and we will put security measures in place. That is not NATO. You guys aren't going to join NATO, but us, America, will put security measures in place to make sure that Russia doesn't further invade. Right? I think that's a win to me. But I do think it's something to keep in mind how close Trump and Putin seem to be. The fact that Trump continuously is seeming to do these restrictive and communist-like tones to American society, where when you look at what's going on in D.C., when you look at what happened in L.A. earlier this year with him sitting in the National Guard when Gavin Newsom, the mayor of Los Angeles, were saying we don't need that. When you look at the headline of just today with Trump taking in mail-in ballots, he is restricting democracy at best, at worst, trying to destroy it. And that seems scary when paired with the positive relationship that Putin and Trump seem to have. But this is a very nuanced discussion, and I think it is unfair to not give Trump some credit for the conversations that he's starting for a ceasefire and a cease agreement that could potentially happen soon. So I will give credit on that. Now, I'm going to read a little bit. I'm going to end with a little bit of an article from the New York Times that I read. I don't have it up here because I don't pay for the New York Times. But this is an article by Stephen Erlanger, Erlanger. You should look up this article. It is very interesting. And the headline on it is Europe is left with unclear strategy. And with this, an unclear strategy about how they go about supporting Ukraine, right? And they said Biden in America in this article also had an unclear strategy on how they were going to end this war. And I want to read like a couple of quotes from this if I can get this paper to stop being weird. All right. I want to read a couple quotes from this because I think it is interesting. Let me see. All right. Let's see. And where do I want to go with this? Okay. So, Antonov Levian of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, a research institution in Washington, said, "I can't see that the Europeans have much of a strategy at all." He added, "Until this year, when Trump started this confused peace process," which confused, they mean the back and forth from Trump, who he's blaming. At sometimes he's mad at Putin, saying Putin's stringing him along. And we already talked about the Zelensky meeting in the West Wing in like January or March, beginning of this year, where J.D. Vance and Trump did what they did to Zelensky. We already talked about that, right? So that's where he's coming from, where he says this confused peace process. They were demanding things that were never going to happen, like complete Russian withdrawal from all Ukrainian territories. Let me read that again. Until this year, when Trump started this confused peace process, they, being Europe, were demanding, Europe and maybe Ukraine as well, were demanding things that were never going to happen, like the complete Russian withdrawal from all Ukrainian territories. Now they have shifted, following Mr. Trump, to accepting that for the foreseeable future, Russia will keep the 20% of Ukraine it has already conquered. What they want to do is ensure Russia stops there. So again, this is getting into that conversation where if Trump is able to get Putin to stop there, there is a little bit of a conversation. Now, it does look like it does suck if someone comes into your house and takes your whole downstairs and the person that's got to stop him is saying, hey, you can only have the upstairs. You're keeping your downstairs. But the way that it's looking now, your whole upstairs will be gone. Do you want your up? It sounds crazy saying this out loud, but that's the way it looks, right? And here's another part of this that I want to read. Now, for his part, as he did again in Alaska, Mr. Putin continues to demand solving all the root causes of the conflict, which he believes is the encroachment of NATO into the Russian sphere of influence when the Soviet Union collapsed. Putin is not going to allow Ukraine to get into Russia, and Ukraine to get into NATO. And Trump does seem very sensitive or caring or willing to listen to what Putin wants. I can see how you say that's dangerous, and that worries me too. Now, the last thing that I want to say with this article is, if the Ukraine policy of former President Joe Biden Jr. was to strengthen Ukraine and force Mr. Putin to the table, it failed because both the United States and Europe were too slow or too timid, providing too little military aid too late, said Ulrich Speck, a German analyst. And that's the thing. With Joe Biden, everybody was either like, why are Americans sending all this money to a foreign country? Or you were saying, why isn't he doing any more? And it seemed like possibly Joe Biden did something very dangerous, which was to be lukewarm when you're either going to be cold or steaming hot. This article is saying that the plan to just get Putin to the table by giving Ukraine a bunch of military weapons, a bunch of money, a bunch of resources, a bunch of everything. You didn't do a good job because you didn't full out blitz them. You gave them just enough to not be taken over, but not enough to keep Russia from doing what they've been doing, which is slowly but surely taking over more land. And I think I think it's fair to say, if you're going to be mad at Trump for not getting Russia to completely get out of Ukraine, you should also be mad at Biden because you should be of the mindset of, we care about Ukraine, we care about democracy. In my opinion, we care about Ukraine, we care about democracy. And with that, we have to do whatever it takes to make sure Ukraine is able to keep this land, and we're able to have Putin come to the table with conversations of anything he can get. Because now today, Putin is coming to the table with, I don't have to do a ceasefire because we're 3 years in and I have more land. We have the upper hand. And while some, and this is a nuanced conversation. There's conversations about maybe America did not give enough to keep Russia from getting that upper hand, and now Trump has to do what he has to do, which is in this war and hopefully stop Russia from getting all of Ukraine from, the Trump perspective, from the American perspective of, we don't want Russia taking over full control of Ukraine. I feel like that's a very popular American perspective. I'm not saying that's mine. I'm just going off of what's happening now. So I'll end it with this, where I started. I do think Trump is going to be able to stop or be able to create some cease agreement. I do not think that means that he is going to get Putin to give up the land that Russia currently has military control over. But I do think it's going to be continuously interesting to see when, where, and if ever Trump decides to go at Putin heavily. And I think the only way that will happen is if Putin does not get out of the land that they're trying to get control over, that they don't have full military control over. But that's what's going to be happening. That's going to be the next thing to look into those coming days, because the talks today went well. The talks on Friday went well. Trump is getting people to the table. And as much as I hate to do this, in this one specific part, stay on the channel. The next video will be about DC. So if you hate to hear me saying Trump could be doing right, just, I guess, stay calm. But I will say, I think this is an objective win for Trump. And based on the situation that he's dealing with, if he's able to do a cease agreement like I've talked about in this video, you got to give him a win for this one. All right. If you watch this video for here, I appreciate it. You could be, I say it at the beginning of every video and the end of every video. You could be watching anything in the world and you're watching Guarantee News, and I appreciate that. Please subscribe to this channel, GS Studios, GSTEWDIOS, for more videos like this, where I'll be covering the latest news that are coming up, part 1, part 2, part 3, because the news is always evolving. And part 1, part 2, part 3, including this video, including Russia, Ukraine, and America, and this ceasefire or this war, and if Trump is able to end it, because I think this will be a major part of his legacy and a major part of what he ran on. So this is another thing of keeping his word, or seeing if he's able to do the things that he said he would do when he ran. So subscribe, turn on post notifications so you can get all the updates, and thank you for watching. And that's a wrap.